Welcome back, guys. Another weekend at Dean's place, working on the FRS and getting the J Series ready to go. Tiffany is yet again working today. She's been so swamped, busy, so we're gonna get started without her. I think she's coming out tomorrow to help out, so we'll have her around tomorrow. Today, we're just kind of getting stuff set up, getting a game plan for the weekend, and kind of walking you guys through what we're gonna start doing. So here is the new J Series. This is a OEM J35a4 short block. This is straight from Honda, as it comes from Honda with the grease and everything else. So we gotta start getting this thing dressed up. We should have heads hopefully sometime next week and start getting final assembly done. So we got miscellaneous fresh Honda parts, really nothing better than OEM factory Honda. We got the lower timing gear, which also has the timing marks on here for the crank sensor. And then we have tensioner, idler pulley, and then just a retainer for the timing belt that goes on with this. This engine is also going to run a ATI dampener off our old F series. It is the same crank size, fits right on. We will have to make our own custom mount for the alternator, as the F series pulley does change the location of the serpentine belt drive. But they don't make a race dampener, or at least ATI doesn't, that fits the J Series. They make like a street one, but we're really looking for something that's under drive and something that's gonna help with the harmonics that can be reliable for the amount of miles this thing is gonna see on the track. Other things, one of the major problems on the J Series with swaps and fitment is this very large and awkward oil filter housing. So this is something that incorporated in it is the Vtec solenoid, which makes it more difficult to get rid of. You can't just take it off and throw it in the garbage. So we got this piece here. I'll have to look up, I don't remember what the name of the company is that makes it, but they specialize in making engine swaps, or J Series engine swaps, for off-road trucks and dune buggies. So kind of cool, came across them. They made this piece, still incorporates all of the ports for Vtec as well as oil pressure, which we'll be running a AIM oil pressure sensor, since we'll be running basically all AIM sensors to run along with the PDM and dash system that we run. A few other things we got going on this weekend. The other two guys, Jake and Felipe on the team, their OS Geiken showed up. We will have to take those apart and get them set with the proper slip that we want to get the right turn in. When you get the OS Geikens from them, they come very tight, and we probably should have had them set up when they left, but they've been on back order, and OS Geiken's super backed up, so it was easier just to get them here, and we'll set them up based off of how we have Tiffany's set. Like I said, they come very tight. They're set up more for a higher horsepower car with a much larger tire. So if you put them on straight into the car, the way they come, the car has a really big tendency to push. It doesn't like turning in the corner. The rear end just has way too much lock under decel. So we usually deactivate quite a few of the clutch plates inside, change cone springs, a few other things. We'll show you guys how we set them up, but we run them really loose. I mean, we want just enough tension on the limited slip to get a drive coming out of the corner and have both tires, but we want them to basically be as far unlocked as possible entering the corner. That's why a lot of the prototype cars actually run open diffs, simply because it gives them such a better turn in, and since the cars are so wide, they don't have issues lifting wheels coming out of the corner, so they can get away with an open diff. But these cars going over the curbing and running at some of the tracks you run at, you really can't get away with an open diff or even a helical. Helical diff still has issues with lifting a tire and just spinning one tire, and it's really not the kind of drive you want off the corner. So other things this week, Dean has been busy as always. Hasport sent us some mounts. Thank you, Hasport. They're gonna help us develop mounts for the J Series in the FRS platform. So these are their J Series to S2000 swap mounts. Just as you can buy them, this is their shelf piece. We're gonna be modifying these to fit into the FRS chassis. and then we will send them the designs and or the mount so that they can make a 3D model of it and use it to produce more. So these are the same mounts you guys have probably all seen, you know, very similar to what everybody runs, but basically got to make a way to support these into the car, hopefully using similar to what Subaru used from the factory, and then that'll work for putting the J series in. The goal obviously is, you can see our subframe is a little bit modified, but nothing other than clearance for the oil pan on the old F series. But the goal really is to make this swap something that's feasible for somebody at home to be able to do. So obviously cutting the subframe and modifying 20,000 parts is not ideal, so we'll have to figure out a way to make it easier to do that. Josh is busy working on the new brake setup. So this is an Alcon brake package that we got from a friend of ours. It's a four piston forged Alcon caliper, really nice, lightweight, 13-inch rotor, which is similar to what we ran with the Wilwood calipers, but we just had terrible flex. I mean, you would get some temp into the brakes, and the next thing you know, it would just be super spongy on the brake pedal, very inconsistent, very difficult to trust the car under brakes, especially at tracks like Road America. So hopefully this brake package with a much more aggressive pad is going to give us the braking that we want. The other thing that's super nice is it runs a very, very generic brake pad shape that I'm able to buy off of eBay from like old NASCAR teams. So I can get a very expensive brake pad for $100. They do come way too thick, as NASCAR runs typically a 25 millimeter thick pad, and I think these are an 18 millimeter capacity. So I'll have to machine a little bit of the material off, but you know, basically get a brand new set of brake pads for less than $100. You know, Performance Frictions and some of those other really high-end brands are super expensive. I mean, you're gonna spend, you know, $300, $400, $500 for just a set of front pads. So to be able to get pads very affordably really helps cut down on cost for the season. Wish we could do that with tires. Tires is, from what I heard, Hoosier tire price is going up this year. Really need to win lots of tires this year, because man, it's about the one thing left on the budget that costs a lot of money, and there's really no way around it. You can't win a race without good tires. So I'm gonna get you guys set on the tripod, start getting parts set up. I gotta pull miscellaneous pieces off our spare test fit engine to put on this. Since this came as a short block, there's a lot of miscellaneous bolts and spacers and stuff like that that I have to use off of the junkyard engine. So I'll get all this stuff going. You guys can kind of follow along. We'll talk through it. And if you guys have any questions, please leave a comment. All right, so we're gonna start pulling this engine apart. Like I said, we're gonna take off this oil filter housing. The water pump also has to come off. We have to cut the actual fins off the other side of the water pump. We run electric water pumps, so this just acts as an idler on this engine for the timing belt. So first things first, take the spool valve off. All of this stuff will get transferred over to the other housing. Luckily all this stuff's brand new since this engine just came out of the crate. So this uses the OEM Honda gasket, little screen, pop that in here. It's a very good habit just to use a little bit of Loctite on anything that's going on an engine that's going to see extended time at high RPM. We use red Loctite for everything. We don't even bring blue. We just use different amounts of red for how much strength we need. You need it to stay on forever, you just cover the entire bolt. You need it to be like blue Loctite, you just do one dot. It's not advice, it's just how we do it.
All right,
Then back here behind the oil filter adapter housing is the oil pressure sensor. So Dean has a landline. I don't know who still has a landline, just Dean. Go ahead and take this out. So we will be reading oil temperature from in the pan. When we build the custom oil pans, we will weld a -8 MPT or an 1/8 inch MPT for the temp sensor. We'll read pressure from the factory spot on almost every Honda engine. The OEM location for the pressure sensor is more than good enough. So put on some of our Loctite 565. This is probably 20 years old. This is Dean's. This has probably seen a few wars, but still does a fantastic job. Does not smell good. I don't know if it actually smells bad when you buy it new or if it's just because it's old, but still gets the job done. Come on, match the shapes. So I'm actually not really happy with, so Honda's sensor, those of you that have done this kind of stuff before, Honda sensor is a straight thread. It is very, very similar, if not identical thread pitch to 1/8 inch MPT, but since it is not a tapered thread, the opening on the hole is really too tight to get a 1/8 inch MPT started. So I'm going to, that might be wrong. I think it is actually just a tapered thread. They have it really tight. I mean, this has a very, very big taper on it, so this is a very tight hole. So we'll have to tap that a little bit bigger in order to get the AIM pressure sensor to fit. God, that stuff stinks. All right, so Vtec spool valve. You have a spring. Spring goes in. And you got your little valve. Nice, good machining, very solid. Put our gasket back in here. So we are not sure yet whether or not we're going to run Vtec. With how much power these engines are going to make, we're hoping mid to high 300s at the wheel is way too much power for what we're allowed to have for GLTC. We're obviously going to have Vtec wired and hooked up so we can use it outside of grid life and other events. But we might end up running no Vtec just to get the power pulled down far enough to meet the power to weight ratio required, the 12.5 to 1 for GLTC. Yes, that is precision torqued. All right, so this adapter runs -10 O-ring to -10 AN. I'm not sure whether or not we're going to stick with -10 AN or if we're going to go to 12. We do have a lot of the lines we have at home are going to be -12, so we'll just have to kind of see what we want to do. But for now, I'll put these in. Nice thing is they did a nice job of labeling in and out on this. So I don't know if any of you guys have had the struggle before where you put a sandwich plate on a typical Honda engine, or any engine for that matter, and you want to put a sensor in for oil temperature in the sandwich plate, but you don't know what side is in or out. Obviously, putting the sensor on the inside versus the out is going to be not where you want it, because that oil has already been cooled by the oil cooler, versus putting it on the out where it's coming straight out of the oil pan, through the oil pump, straight through the fitting with the sensor in it. So you would always want to have your temp sensor in the out port, not the in. You don't want to check the temp going into the engine, you want to check the temp coming out of the pan. All right, so next we're gonna go ahead and get the water pump pulled off. I'll show you guys what we're gonna cut off and explain a little bit more about why we do this. On the F-Series engine, the water pump is an external pump driven by the serpentine belt. So you can delete it without having to worry about timing issues. Obviously on the J-Series, the water pump is part of the timing belt system. So you can't just delete this because you don't have an idler for the timing belt to go on. So we have to retain the OEM water pump, but we don't want the fins to be moving the water in this water pump. We want to be able to control the water pump speed to help control the temperature of the engine. We don't run a thermostat. We literally just control the RPM of the electric water pump to control our temperature. We had absolutely great success with it last year, so planning on doing the exact same thing. If you guys don't already have one of these Milwaukee Ratchets, this is like probably the most used Milwaukee tool that I have. And I have a lot of Milwaukee tools I use for work, but this thing, I mean, I've had for over 5 years, flawless. Use it almost every day. So you can see on here, you have your fins. This is what moves the water in the water pump and creates your flow. So we have to retain this pulley, and we have to retain the bearing. So we need to get this off here without melting the seal out of here and without ruining the bearing. So this is gonna be, probably get Dean the Legend's advice on this. He'll have a good, easy way. I mean, he might even have a tool, who knows, to get this off here. So all the rest of these idler pulley and tensioner pulley, these I need to pull the sleeve and the bolts off of our junkyard test engine. I wanted to have OEM components that were new. I don't want to use the old stuff off that engine, but I don't need to order new bolts. So I'm gonna get that engine torn down, and then we will get it all reassembled on here. so that's got to stay on there.
Yep. So the seal's got to be part of that, so that's got to stay on. So we'll just take and cut the impeller blades off.
Yep. So for those of you guys at home, you can't just take the whole thing off because the seal is held on by the center section of this. This is why this is the old pump off the junkyard engine that we tried this on before we ruined a brand new one. So you can see there's a spring in there that keeps the pressure loaded against the bottom of this. So we'll just have to cut the fins off. Yep. Now we know. All right, so we got the crank position sensor here. Goes in, actually a pretty nice setup from Honda. Not that I expect anything less. And then tomorrow we'll modify the new water pump without ruining it like we did the trash one. Get that finished up, get the idler put on, tensioner put on, and then we should have the heads hopefully next week to be able to finish up the timing completely and hopefully start on the header here soon, waiting on materials and the custom collector to get made. So that'll finish us up for today. Tiffany and I will be out tomorrow. Hopefully she doesn't have to work, and we'll keep rolling on this.